Hello, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. My name is Ali Ansari, and I am the co-founder and CEO of DailyDebate. And hopefully, during this quarantine, I expect that we'll be publishing YouTube videos every day for you to see and update your debate skills and knowledge. And these new videos will be under the Daily Debate series that we'll be putting on YouTube and our podcast. So it'll mean a lot to us if you could check out our content from time to time. For today, though, what we're going to be talking about is counterplans. So, if you're new to parliamentary debate, basically the way that it's currently conducted right now is that the proposition will affirm a resolution. For example, the resolution is that the United States should end military aid to authoritarian regimes. Right? The proposition will say that we agree with that, and the negative will say we disagree with that. Now, both sides take a very wholesale, totalizing approach. So on the negative side specifically, which we'll be targeting today, oftentimes the negative will say 100% we should give military aid to every single authoritarian regime. We should give that aid. And there's not a lot of variability in the negative strategy. They always have to defend that one position. At least that's the current trend. Counterplans, though, exist in other styles of American debate, and I think that this is a really good way for the negative to engage with what the affirmative is saying, because in real policy making, you don't discuss only one form of a policy. You discuss many different versions, many approaches to solving a problem, and counterplans really open you up to that aspect of policymaking. So with that in mind, let's go on to what is a counterplan. So a counterplan, in its very basic form, it's an alternative course of action, and more specifically, it replaces the proposition's plan by providing a benefit that the proposition cannot provide. Now, imagine this. Let's say the proposition plan was that we should go to McDonald's for lunch, and the reason is that it gives you happiness. Now, my counterplan could be, no, let's go to Carl's Jr. In order to give me happiness and make me less hungry, right? That's a very basic counterplan, and in addition to being a rather ridiculous topic, it probably wouldn't work for reasons we'll talk about later in this video, but that's a basic intro to what a counterplan is. It's exactly as it sounds, a counterplan. It provides an alternative course of action that replaces the proposition's plan. So with that in mind, there are really four types of counterplans. And these may seem like really big words, but I would recommend that you look at this rather logically, because logically these all really make sense, and I'll try to explain them in as much detail as possible. First, there is something called an agent counterplan, and the CP stands for counterplan. So what an agent counterplan is that it changes the agent that does the proposition's plan. And I think this is best illustrated with an example. So let's say the proposition says that the United States should basically put in a $15 minimum wage. The United States federal government should put in a $15 minimum wage. Now, what agent counterplan would do was it would say, no, we disagree with the agent that does your plan, and we would say that a different agent should do the plan. So the counterplan, or the agent counterplan, would be the 50 states of the United States of America should institute a $15 minimum wage. And then, see, the reason why that's so cool is because now, rather than just talking about the benefits of a $15 minimum wage, you can access more unique topics, such as the role of state versus federal government in economic policy, and federalism, and the role of federalism in today's society, and is giving power to the federal government effective or not? Like, do we want a limited government or a more expansive government? These are questions that an agent counterplan allows you to explore, because it pokes at the question of, is the agent that is doing the proposition plan actually the right one? Right? And as you can see, it's a very nuanced debate, and it kind of shifts the debate in a different direction. The second type of counterplan you can read is called an advantage counterplan. And this is a little bit less intuitive, but hopefully in 1 minute it'll make sense. So the thesis of an advantage counterplan is that it solves for the proposition's advantage without doing their plan. Now, that may seem a little confusing, but let's illustrate it with an example again. So let's say the proposition says that we should affirm the resolution, memes do more good than harm because they make people happy, right? So the advantage of memes is that people are made happy. An advantage counterplan would say give everyone free passes to Six Flags. That's one example. Why? Because that's an alternative way to make people happy. As you can see, both the proposition plan and the counterplan share the same advantage or the same benefit, which is making people happy. But the reason why an advantage counterplan is so strategic is because it avoids the disadvantages of the proposition's plan, right? So with an advantage counterplan would basically say, look, there's other ways of getting the same thing done without resorting to their method. So if we go back to this topic really quick of memes do more good than harm, the advantage counterplan of giving everybody passes to Six Flags, right? What that would do is it would make people happy without getting into the disadvantage of memes, which is getting people addicted to their phones, right? Instead of getting people addicted to their phones with the advantage counterplan of going to Six Flags, people are now incentivized to get off their phones, hang out with their friends, and really enjoy nature and quality time with their companions, right? So these advantages, you wouldn't have this debate like a meme versus Six Flags in a real debate, but hopefully it shows you the key reason why advantage counterplans are so important is that it allows you to basically accomplish the same goal as the affirmative in a different manner. Let's do another example, one that's actually much more recent. If you haven't heard the brutal murder of George Floyd has sparked a massive uprising in many parts of the country, and in some parts of the country, these protests of police brutality have even turned violent with riots. Including methods such as burning buildings and causing property destruction. Right now, that is let's assume that that's a proposition's plan, that we should solve for police brutality by violent revolution. Now, an advantage counterplan would say, no, let's lobby through Congress and political institutions and the court system. So in order to get rid of police brutality. Now note, both sides have the same exact goal of getting rid of police brutality. It's just a question of like the way you did it, right? So that's basically saying that we should solve for the affirmative advantage without doing the plan. And I think this also gets into a process counterplan. And this actually might be more applicable to a process counterplan. So what a process counterplan is that it basically changes the process by which the proposition's plan is done. And I actually think this might be a little bit more applicable here. So, right, we were talking about the George Floyd and the violent uprisings. So the negative may disagree with the process of ending police brutality, right? The negative may say, look, we agree with your idea of ending police brutality. We just think that that's a bad method of doing it. Rather than inciting violent uprisings, we should do peaceful protests and lobby through the court system. So, to clarify, the difference between an advantage counterplan and a process counterplan is that the advantage counterplan will often be it will be tangentially related to the proposition's plan in that it will still provide you the same benefit, but it won't be attached or in the same vicinity or in the same area of discussion, right? So let's give you another example of an advantage counterplan just so that you are really clear on what's going on. So let's say that we want to acquire let's say that we want to improve democracy, and the way we do this is by publicizing. Let's say that's publicizing presidential candidates' medical information, and we say it's a more democratic process, right? Giving people the right to information that's a true form of democracy, and people should be able to see the medical records of the people they're voting for. Now, look, the benefit of giving people access to those types of records is democracy. But an advantage counterplan may say, let's remove gerrymandering, which is a form of changing the lines of districts, voting districts, in order to sometimes favor one party or the other. They say, let's remove that because that's actually a better way to improve democracy. So in these two examples, it's not really directly related. These seem to be two separate concepts. But that advantage counterplan of gerrymandering, right? It avoids the disadvantage of trying to publicize those records, which may be patient doctor confidentiality, for example, right? But a process counterplan in that example that we just talked about with presidential candidates' records, it may be that a different organization, or it may be that there should be a different process by which the medical records are released. So that's kind of the difference between an advantage and process counterplan. Now the final one is a plan inclusive counterplan, or a PIC. And basically, this is my favorite actually. It includes all parts of the plan except a certain portion, and it argues that leaving out that certain portion is good. And this is super cool because this is actually the real heart of policymaking, right? So let's give you an example. Let's say that the proposition says, let's not give military aid to Saudi Arabia, including guns and intelligence, right? Now, a plan inclusive counterplan would say, let's not give guns to Saudi Arabia, but let's give military intelligence so that they can stop terrorism, right? So as you can see, what the plan inclusive counterplan has done is it's included certain portions of the plan, but it's eliminated other parts, or it said that it's disagreed with some parts of the proposition, right? And I think that this is the best version of policymaking that you can get. Because oftentimes you may not disagree entirely with the affirmative, but you may disagree on a certain portion of it, which is why plan inclusive counterplans are really cool. And also, it's important to note that these counterplans, right? They all share something in common, which is that they all need to be competitive. Counterplans must be competitive with the proposition's plan. So the counterplan, what that means is that the counterplan and the proposition plan either physically cannot coexist or functionally should not coexist. And the reason why is that if you can do both at the same time, it seems to eliminate the need for your counterplan specifically. It's because what that would do is if the affirmatives plan and the counterplan can both be done together, then it seems like the affirmative can just say that. Right? There doesn't seem to be any. If there's no disadvantage of doing that, or if it's physically possible to do so, then why not? Let's just do something called a permutation, which is do both policy actions at once. So, but competition allows you to basically distinguish yourself from the proposition plan. And there are two methods of competition. The first is mutual exclusivity, and this one will be rather obvious. So basically, what it says is that if one option exists, then the other cannot exist with it. So let's do a silly example first. Let's say the proposition's plan is that we should add cookies to a cookie jar. And your counter plan is let's destroy the cookie jar entirely. Right? That is clearly competitive on the grounds of mutual exclusivity because what you can't add cookies to a cookie jar and destroy the cookie jar simultaneously. That doesn't seem to work. So that's the concept of mutual exclusivity, that these two events or these two policy actions cannot occur in tandem. Now, the second method of competition is net benefits, right? And the competition based on net benefits says the proposition plan triggers something bad and the counterplan avoids this bad thing. But if you do both the proposition plan and the counterplan, you will still trigger that bad thing. So let's do this for example. Let's say that the net benefits, competition based on net benefits, really ties in well with an advantage counterplan, right? And as you remember, advantage counterplan is solves for the proposition's advantage without doing their plan. So let's go back to the memes versus Six Flags example, right? The net benefits competition would say, look, technically you could have people look at more memes and go to Six Flags, but the problem is that there's still the disadvantage of looking at memes, which is getting addicted to your phone. So doing both at once would still create this disadvantage that we would not want. So this seems to be a counterplan that is competitive based on net benefits because you wouldn't want to do both since it results in something worse or it results in something bad. And that's a more nuanced version of competition. But it's super useful because it ties into this real life logical idea that you wouldn't want to do two things you wouldn't want to do two things together. So let's say somebody says, look, let's have violent protests, and then but then the other side says, no, let's have a peaceful rebellion through the court system and the political institution, right? Even if you did both of those at once, you still seem to incur some sort of disadvantage with doing violent revolutions, which is property destruction. And you can have a full debate about that. But if you win that disadvantage is bad, like destroying property is bad, then doing both together doesn't really seem to be that logical. So, in conclusion, what you want to do with counterplans is basically establish an alternative course of action. And the reason why these are so cool is because it gets into real forms of policymaking in which you debate different policies that may be mutually exclusive or that really get into the nitty gritty of the affirmative plan. And especially my favorite, the plan includes a counterplan, does just that. So if you have any questions about this, please feel free to leave something in the comments or go to our contact page on actdebate.com. But really, I hope this was a good introduction to counterplans, and hopefully you find this useful in your own debating experience, as you may find this useful to start a trend in your own debate league or something. I wish you all the best during these uncertain times, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you.